Okay, here we are live. I'm Dylan Paul. I've been here a couple of times on the Facebook Friday Live at the Foundry. I was trying to get more F's in there if I could. And today, Alex is out of town. He is in Montreal, Quebec. That's my best.
What's he doing there?
I think he's talking to people about makerspaces like he does. And he had some interesting stuff to say. I saw an email the other day from him, but it sounds like things are going great. And
awesome.
But anyway, because of that, I'm here with Blake Compton.
A friend.
Very excited to have him here.
Word.
That's right. Facebook Friday Friends at the Foundry. And now my worry is, because Blake is by far our most active participator.
We'll have no one.
Now I've brought you in. I don't know what to do. We might have tumbleweeds.
Well, I could comment on here and troll us.
If you have to, you could play both roles.
Yes, I'll play both roles.
All right. Well, that'll be great. So we were just talking about this a little bit, but I think we should probably. Okay, let's do it. Let's get into. We were saying we should go over our how we found the foundries.
Yeah,
that was an unintentional.
How we found the Foundry.
How did you find the idea Foundry?
I love my story because it started with soccer. If you remember when we first met, I was this giant soccer fan. Still am a giant soccer fan, just not as involved in the organizing. Mm-hmm. And I was living in North Columbus, Old North. I was big and still am a big supporter of the Wild Goose Creative. And on Facebook, one day I said, "Hey, Facebook, who has a warehouse that I can make a really big crew banner?" And Beth Decker, who was one of the founding members of Wild Goose, said, "Alex Bandar, talk to Alex." And so I reached out to him. I had heard of the Idea Foundry back when it was on Corrugated Way. Mm-hmm. I said, "Hey, Alex, I need to make this banner. Can I check out the Idea Foundry?" And this is at the time, I can't remember exactly when you got involved, but this is 2011. So we were just, Foundry was just expanding into, the second bay. Mm-hmm.
I was there for sure.
Okay. And so the wood framing was up, mm-hmm. but no drywall, and there's still a bunch of open space. Mm-hmm. This is before all the junk showed up.
That's right.
And so he did his tour, his spiel, talking about all the equipment, and I saw your guys' gaming machine right when I walked in. I was like, "This place is awesome." Uh-huh. And at the end of the tour, I was like, "Yeah, so we just need it for like next weekend. We're going to do this banner. We'll be in and out." And he's like, "Cool. Usually we rent this for like $60 an hour or something, some small amount of money." And I was like, "Oh, I don't actually have any money. We just want to do a banner." Mm-hmm. And he looked me in the eyes, and he looked at the security machine or the security system, and he goes, "Well, here's the code," and gives me a key and a code. He's like, "Just take care of the stuff, and we'll just if you're only going to be here one day, then we'll just make it work."
That's great. What a negotiator.
Well, I mean, I had thrown in we'll give you support, and we did. We tagged them and talked about the Foundry to our membership base, which we had 1,000 members at the time. And I think your buddy Levi was one of the guys that vouched for me and said, "Hell yeah, you want Blake around because he's got a lot of friends in the neighborhood, and he's cool." And he didn't directly know me, but all his friends knew me through the bar scene, which is probably not the best way you should do a recommendation.
Yeah, but you have this, this is not an intentional tangent, but you have this thing where, some of it's Facebook, but you have thousands of friends on Facebook. And when I meet people around town, and sometimes I'll mention the Foundry. Oh, we got interrupted. I don't know. Oh, came back. Ignore it.
All right.
But sometimes I'll mention the Foundry or something random around town, and they'll be like, "Oh, I know a guy that does that. It's Blake Compton." And just the other day that happened to me. It was about Killer Queen, but that's the first mention.
That was it, right?
Yeah, I think
that's all we got. Dang
it. We could covertly mention it later. But anyway, but I'll just meet people around town that know you. You're one of those spoke people in the hub and spoke system of the world. You're a connector. Mm-hmm. So that's how it worked originally with the Idea Foundry. Is you were doing crew stuff, and there was something weren't you involved in? There was a bar that was a crew hangout
in 2000. Yeah, we had. I was one of the organizers for the Hudson Street Hooligans, a big fan group of the Columbus Crew, and we had our own members-based bar in 2011 and 2012. And that's a whole side story of how I actually got into zoning and building permit stuff in my current role in construction, because that bar got shut down for some non-conforming zoning things. And I worked through that and figured it all out. But yeah, I mean, I for some reason, when I like something, I get involved more than I should, and then end up being an organizer. And it's something that's just it's in my blood.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I feel the same way. Sometimes you're more of a, like, you join something, a group, you're like, I'll be passive. I'll just be a member. I'll just be an Indian, not a chief. And then there's one thing where you're like, I don't like how this works, or no one is picking up the ball here, and I feel like there could be something. And then next thing you know, it's a 40-hour-week job. And
you're like, I can't do this. I can't.
I have 6 of these, and there's not enough hours.
Right.
So,
so that was the story of the initial connection. And then over we did the banner, and then over the next few months, I kept calling Alex and saying, hey, I got some people that want to check out the Foundry. And I'd bring them through, and Alex would do the tour. And then I wouldn't know, 10 or 15 times in, Alex finally said, I've given you this tour enough times. Why don't you just do the tour?
To you?
Yeah, because I kept inviting people, and I was always there with them. So he's like, you can just do the tour. And that was the beginning of the unofficial title of community liaison that he gave to me. I think fast forward about a year, I started my own construction company, and I was moving out of my house about 5 months into starting my own company. And so that was 2012, going into the fall. And I didn't have any space to store all my tools. And so I reached out to Alex and said, hey, do you have any extra space for me? I'll pay. I want to take a space up if you have it. So in the far back corner of the nether regions of the corrugated Idea Foundry, behind Todd Perkins, there was a bunch of junk, and he's like, we'll move this junk out. You can have that corner. And I'll never forget when we agreed to it, and I said, oh, yeah, I'll build it out. And I remember sending my guys in the morning. We framed, drywalled, hung the door, put in some glass. And at the end of the day, we were like putting a bed coat on. We're taping the drywall. And he came back and he's like, it's done? Because you guys had built all of the other walls and done all the other work. And like, yeah. He's like, you really do run a construction company. Yeah.
Yeah. So when did the construction company start?
It started in February. End of February 2012.
Really?
Yeah.
So after you initially got involved in the Idea Foundry.
Correct.
That's funny. I guess in my brain, you already had the construction company.
No.
Huh. How did that start? How did you said you brought your guys over. That's the thing I'm interested in, is like, how do you go from I think I'm good at construction, I think I should do this, to, and it all came from the bar, like you were talking about, with the zoning issues?
So my specialty, what I'm good at, we all have different skills at our company, and what I'm really good at is dealing with, the bureaucracy behind building out and permitting. And it's, because at the end of the day, there's a process, but then there's also people involved, and I'm really good at working with the people to figure out the process.
Sure. Really?
So yeah, to answer your question, I'm third generation in construction. My grandpa did it. He owned Compton Construction in the 70s, retired it in the early 90s when he took his farmland and converted it to a golf course.
Nice.
And then he worked on the golf course for the rest of his life. My dad got into commercial construction. I grew up watching him do it, but he was never one of those driving fathers that you classically would hear about in construction, where he was like, get in, you got to have a tool belt, get on the job site. Never really did that. But I always had an entrepreneurial fire in me, and he, I think it was my first year out of high school. I needed a side job, and I started pushing a broom on job sites. And he I kind of got inspired by building buildings. And so from basically 19 to 24, I worked full time out in the field. And I got laid off in 2009, which was the same time I had fallen in love with running this fan group for the Columbus Crew. So for a few years, I was literally a professional soccer fan.
Yeah.
Early 20s, didn't really have, I had some money saved up, and I had enough to live off of what I was doing and how I was doing it. And when I went back to work, it was 2011. And that's when I met Alex. I was getting back into the field. I got promoted to sales in the company I was working for, where my dad was a minority owner. And I said, this company doesn't represent me. I was selling something that wasn't me, and I didn't feel authentic. And so I ended up I ended up starting my own company. And shortly thereafter, my dad sold his ownership and joined me.
Really?
And then we had at the time when we built out the space at the Idea Foundry, I think I had 5 employees.
Uh-huh. How did you find those first 5 guys? Just friends? People you knew from other things?
So yeah, they were all relationships. I had one gentleman named Dustin. He was my first employee. He actually was working for me part-time prior to me owning a company.
Sure.
He was helping me with the hooligans. I had marketing things. I was always doing too much. Mm-hmm. So he was helping me fill in the gap. So he came on full-time. And then a good friend of mine had his roommate over to my birthday in 2010, and I met him, and he had a degree in architecture. His name was Jeremy. He'd never wanted to pursue an architecture, profession after he got his degree, and so he was kind of just delivering pizzas. And so over the months, I kept in touch with him. It was only a few months later, and I was like, "Hey, I need someone like you. You're smart. You have this degree." Mm-hmm. And he joined me. And so Jeremy's still with me. Dustin's since passed on, but his oddly enough, his sister has left. No, he's still alive. And he's a great guy, and he's working at another company. But his sister works for us now as our accounting manager. And then my dad and our superintendent, who actually trained me and has worked with my dad since he was 19, Paul. I don't know if you've met Paul. Maybe not. He worked on the first floor project.
Oh, maybe. Is he still involved?
He's still around a little bit. But no, it was Jim that was around for the second floor project.
Mm-hmm. The obvious thing to mention is that you built the Idea Foundry. So, yes. Yeah, the Compton Construction is responsible for the room we're in now, which is actually not the normal room we're in, which we're next door, but this is the classroom. But this entire second floor, and I feel it's so funny now. I meet some people in the co-working space or people that have offices and stuff, and they didn't know. They just recently found out about the Idea Foundry. Wow. So they think, oh, this looks like this beautiful second floor area. It's great. What a cool building. How did we not know about this? This building was like especially the second floor, like you could not have even occupied the second floor. It was completely, it was abandoned, but not for that long. But like the second floor hadn't been used in a long time. It had holes in it, and there was no real utility stuff up here. I mean, it was crazy. The transformation is gigantic.
It was a crazy endeavor to renovate the second floor while we have an active first floor. Mm-hmm. And the coolest thing about the Idea Foundry, but is also the most challenging, is that what is it?
Yeah.
What it's the passion of the people that occupy the space. So it's ever evolving. Mm-hmm. And so trying to define the space early on, I mean, I wish people could have seen the original designs for the second floor. It was these like row offices with one big event space in the middle, and there was 2 layers of offices on each side of the building, and it was dead. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was not a good design. It was an initial concept. This was 2013, and we were like, okay, this could be it. And we were thinking more about what the Idea Foundry had classically been, as far as we need small office workspaces for tenants, and that's it. And we didn't think about the collaborative spaces in the adaptive spaces that we would need, and that we shouldn't pigeonhole ourselves into basically row offices and individual like straight linear places.
Mm-hmm. And it's not even, I mean, it's finished, but like it's not set in stone. Like we still have rooms that we're figuring out what to do with. And it's a constant ongoing thing around here. I mean, this really only been open for 2 months.
Yeah, fully open, yeah.
And the second floor, that is. And things are still evolving and changing. What do we use this room for? Maybe this room's better for this. I know a lot of events are coming up, and they're trying to decide what the best use of the space is. But it's such a cool spot. Yeah. That obviously we're sort of preaching to the choir here because everyone knows about it. But the cool thing is knowing how it's changed. Because it was just a crazy empty warehouse. It was a cool old warehouse. Yeah. But that's my favorite thing of the transformation is, like, you can see the brick wall behind us. I guess in the video you kind of can see there's behind Blake there's a pipe. And so like some of the stuff we choose to keep, and like the windows are brand new. The original columns are here. The floor is old, but like the new stuff and the old stuff, it's the perfect mix of, this is a 100-year-old building, but it's not like we work in a nice office. So it's a perfect mix. I think it's a great space. It's amazing.
And to kind of talk about like the blank slate that the space still feels like, that was intentional. I mean, early on, and a credit to, Christopher Celeste being in a lot of the design meetings, he had a big vision on, Celeste is one of the main investors that has made this happen. Early on, he said, don't overthink this design. Let the use decide the design. This can be a work in progress. And telling that story actually captures members' passions in different ways. So the phone booths being just a white box, and now they're starting to get built out, and some other decorative details. And then also, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. People are going to come in and rent a space and say, hey, I want to do this thing. Oh my gosh, that's a great idea. Let's do that thing. And so I think not overthinking design and allowing for the space to get filled up and prettied over time was a smart decision. Yep.
Yeah, and you said it earlier, but the biggest asset of the Idea Foundry is the people, and they have infinite ideas. So it's appropriately named, the Idea Foundry. And so, yeah, we're always going to think of things down the road, or the members are going to think of things that we couldn't possibly imagine starting out. So, yeah, fantastic. I guess I should tell my origin story. Is that what we're doing? Where we should go? Do you care? Do you want to hear it?
I do, because I actually don't know. Here's what I do know.
Okay, go ahead.
I kind of liken you to the original shop manager.
Yeah.
I assume it was you and Levi, and you guys had this linchpin office. So as you walked into the back because there was this office space, kind of like a showroom-ish. And then there was a couple of clean offices and some bathrooms, and then you open this door and you're in the shop. And that was you guys had the first or the second office that wrapped around the workspace.
Yeah.
And it was Refab Studio at the time.
That's right.
And as far as I was concerned when I came in, like, you were the guy to talk to. You and Levi were the guy to talk to if we wanted to do crazy things.
Yeah, for sure. So I think I may have said this before, but either way, I think it's interesting that the way I got involved was I took a couple classes. I guess I heard the other day that it was one of the first classes, but I took a bladesmithing class when we were at Leonard Avenue.
Oh, wow.
So Alex said it was one of the first classes. It was in Adlai's garage. It was me, Levi, and two other people from COSI. We worked at the time. And we took it in his garage. Alex was there. And at the time, I just thought, Alex wants to learn about bladesmithing too, or whatever he's doing. And now I realize that if it was the first class or one of the first classes, that he was like, hey, I'm teaching guys, or I'm having a guy who I kind of maybe don't know that well, Adlai, because I think that it's so early on, but I didn't know this as a student at the time. I'm having this guy teach these people how to make knives in his house. He says he can do it, and it seems like it could be dangerous. They're making knives. And it certainly could be dangerous. So he was just there to make sure that this business made any sense. And then he was like, this class isn't like a crazy thing, this guy can actually do it. So now I realize that's why he was there the whole time. But that's how I first got involved. I think Levi found out about it on Craigslist. That's the thing Alex always says, that he just opened up shop and was put an ad on Craigslist just to see if anyone pays attention.
Yeah.
And Levi's religious about Craigslist. So he originally was like, hey, we should go take this class. And
I think he also had a meetup, right? One of those, there was a website called meetup.com or something where you could set up a group and say, hey, let's meet up about this thing.
I think so.
So I think he used that to assemble a group. I remember him telling a story, and it'd be great to have Alex tell the story if he hasn't, but talking about because I think there was an initial 15 or 20 people that kind of got together, but then there was that okay, whose intentions are true and who's here for, actually making this thing a reality, and who's here to just hang out and, drink and break and make knives.
Sure.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. So I took that class. I took another class, and I was like, this place is fantastic. And then we heard, that was right about the time when we heard they were moving to the new building. And, it was like, hey, if you want a studio, this is the way to get it, because you'll pretty much guarantee a studio space because we're building them out. And you'll be the one to build your own studio. And that was literally how it was, that we had the equivalent of two spaces. So most people had, I don't even know what it was, 10 by 10, and we had two of those.
Right.
So we had the end cap on that row of back-to-back studios.
Right.
And we painted bright orange just to stand out and be ridiculous. And it was Refab Studio. That was our original business. So when we worked at COSI, we were fabricators, exhibit people, just building all kinds of wacky stuff. You get a lot of skills working there. I don't know Levi's actually commented on there. But anyway, yeah, so we were, he's saying the mezzanine or the meganine. So we had we built another level on top that we like stored stuff.
Right.
He's just being silly, but,
that's with the Z, Levi.
Yeah. I don't know what he's saying.
Mezzanine and meganine.
I think it's meganine as in, even bigger than a regular mezzanine. It's a meganine. So anyway, at COSI, you learn to build a lot of wacky stuff, or like they'll have these problems where it's like, who knows how to build this, or this, no one's ever done this before, or whatever. Right. And they have to be super durable, and they've got to be kind of fun. So we got some pretty good skills there, and we like doing that kind of stuff. So that's why we went and started our own thing. Eventually, I mean, at some point it was my full-time thing. Levi definitely worked full-time hours, but also most of the time had another job. But we sort of spun off and did that. But I mean, we had that studio right up until we moved to this new building because I moved to Florida. I know that breaks your heart.
It does.
Every time I mention it and bring it up. But for the last 4 years, about up until September, I moved back. But so we didn't have that studio then, and that was really the time when we moved to the new building. So for me, I saw the building when it was completely empty. This building now on State Street, and then I saw it now. You know, like I came back and it was almost finished. It was like the second floor was pretty much finished, and so it was a huge. I had seen it a couple times in between stopping by and visiting, but man, it was a huge change for me. And you're right. At the old shop on Corrugated, Levi and I were there doing crazy hours, and we were like sort of shop manager, like trading shop manager for time on the tools and stuff like that. So if the welder was broken or if the shop bot needed fixed or whatever, we would fix it and then, you know, get some exchanged hours on other things or whatever.
But if you remember, this is actually has turned into a bigger story and such a little story to begin with, which is I'll call it the Ply-Boo story.
Yeah.
So if you remember, our first interactions together were so it was actually it actually must have been 2010. I think I was off a year on when I first saw the Foundry. They had moved into Corrugated Way in 2009 or 10.
That's hard for me to remember. You know, I heard today Cinco de Mayo apparently is the original is the anniversary of the Idea Foundry, and today has been around 9 years. So maybe that helps.
So maybe the first year was in the garage, and the second year was at Corrugated Way, which of
Leonard. So the three real buildings are Leonard, Corrugated, and then this one now.
Okay.
State.
So in the reason I bring it up is it was Cyber Monday. And I was browsing the internet and I saw this really cool laptop stand that this Icelandic lady had made, and it was amazing, but it was $90.
Yeah. And
I was like, oh, that's too expensive. This looks like I could build it myself. So I forwarded it to Alex and I said, Alex, we can build this at the Idea Foundry, right? And his two questions, because he can never just ask one question, was, do you want to be taught on how to build it and you build it yourself, or do you want us to build it for you for a cost? And I said, I don't want to learn how to do this. Just build it for me. And of course, keep that, remember, $90 was too expensive for me. So what do we end up doing? We look at the scale behind it and we do research, and you helped do research. I think we found the Ply-Boo and it was like 1.25 inch, inch thick Ply-Boo. And we were talking about what it would cost to laminate. We said, well, we could probably do it with 1 inch. And we made this Ply-Boo, like this bamboo looking laptop stand that the two pieces would connect together. And instead of just making one, we realized, well, we'd have to buy a whole sheet. Yeah. And then I looked at the scale and I said, well, if I'm going to buy one sheet, I have to pay freight. I might as well buy 2 sheets. Yeah. So I went from $90 to like $500 plus your guys' cost.
I think the sheets are $300. So this is plywood. This is bamboo plywood.
Right.
And if you know anything about bamboo, this is me explaining to the audience, is that it's thin. You know, you see the little shoots. They're like, maybe 4 inches around at most. Those are big ones.
Right.
And so to make plywood out of that, they got to cut them in the little strips. And we have a lot of stuff here. The co-working desks are made like that.
Right.
There's a lot of other little tables around that are like that. But it's that bamboo. It's basically 3 plies. So the inside section is just a bunch of plies this way, and then the 2 tops. Nice veneers on the top. Right. But yeah, it's like 1 inch thick, and I think it's pretty expensive. They call it Ply-Boo. It's $300 a sheet. So I think you must have spent $600 on it.
I remember it was under $1,000, but it was a way more than 90.
Yep.
And I'll never forget, because we made the first sheet of laptop stands. And then I think by the time we got into that, no, I guess this was 2011 going into 2012. By the time we got into it, I had started my own company, and I don't have enough time to talk about the second sheet. And so we never cut that second sheet into laptop stands. That second sheet turned into my conference room table that you guys built, a conference room table, a plans table. When I moved in my office, I hired you guys to build all this cool stuff. And Plyboo turned into like, our marquee material for our office. Mm-hmm. And, since then, you moved away, tear in my eye. Mm-hmm. And then, Matt kind of took over on building furniture for us, Matt Hatcher here, the chief facilities officer. And that Plyboo is, to me, is now it's all over the building, and it's used a lot more. All over the city, which is really cool.
Yeah, no, people use it a ton here, and I always think about that. And Matt is still, when he's ordering it, still getting it from the same company that we were ordering it from. Wow. There's just not there's no other suppliers. You would think there would be more, but
if I can remember, there was one in the States, and then there was like one like either in Canada or like for some reason Hawaii or something, where like they brought it all from overseas, and that was just the hub that came to America, and none of it, like, it was so expensive.
Yeah, it is. It's still, I mean, a normal sheet of plywood, like a not very good sheet of plywood, is like $30-$40, but like a nice one, you're talking like $80. And so that gives you an idea of how much more expensive. It's at least 3 times as expensive as like a nice, like the top of the line sheet of plywood.
It's beautiful though.
It is nice.
You don't have to do too much to it for it to like stand out. That's the cool thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a very cool thing. One of my favorite things we ever made was that conference table, because we cut your logo, the 2 interlocking C's, and right in the center of it, and then we cut down exactly to the next ply. So you've got the cross cut of the top veneer top, and then the plies going the other direction. Just such a cool material to be able to like go into those other layers and see like how it's made in there. It's such a cool material. It's awesome to work with.
And I mean, the testament to the growth of my business, I mean, when I bring people into my conference room, they always talk about that table.
Yeah.
They look at all the bamboo, and they look at we even went to, after a few years of being able to have photography on projects we've completed, we had, photos on the back wall of our conference room, and we took, because Plyboo is so expensive, we'd taken all the scrap and used it as much as possible. And so we took scrap Plyboo and actually cut it halfway through, and then, it kind of buckled, but then Matt was able to form it back, and we made picture frames out of it.
Oh, cool.
And then we used some scrap to make like a little ledger for kind of like a wainscoting. And I mean, the whole place is just decked out in Plyboo. But clients really are impressed with the finish and just the kind of the creativity behind what you guys were able to accomplish with it.
Yeah. Well, when you were talking about doing professional photography and stuff, that's one of the things that I feel like people who are paying attention to your business, to Compton Construction, I don't know if we even said that, but I'm sure they figured it out. But your Facebook page is so active, especially when you're right in the middle of a project. Pins Mechanical is one of those, or the Idea Foundry is one of those, or Land Grant. When you have done those projects in the past, and there's videos, there's time-lapse videos of them being made, there's interviews with people, there's just all kinds of great video content, photography stuff. You guys have done such a good job with social media, just getting it out there. And that's part of what I was saying earlier about and I always meet people around town who know you or know of you. It's because of stuff like that, where it's like, oh yeah, and you make these videos, and you never know who's watching them. And then you find out that, oh, this guy, friend of a friend, he knows all about the Pins and Mechanical build out because you've been doing it. And obviously it helps you, it helps them. It's a cool project, especially for a while there. Compton Construction was like the microbrewery, the place to go to build out your brewery. Yeah. And it happened at the exact same time that breweries became the thing in Columbus, or a lot everywhere, but Columbus especially.
Yeah, we're working on 8, 9, and 10 right now of brewery projects.
Yeah.
And I have to give credit where credit's due. We weren't doing that video stuff. We weren't capturing those moments prior to the land grant project. Mm-hmm. Walt Key is one of the owners over there. Walt, Adam, and Quentin, and Jamie the brewer at the time. we're all really, really involved in that project. And Walt is the creative director there, and he kept hooking up all these GoPros. I didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
But he started putting these videos together, telling the story. And still to this day, they have these this GoPro animation videos, scrolling on their screens.
Yep.
And I was so inspired by it. I'm like, we need to tell this story because what we do is finite, right? We build the space out and then we're gone.
Yeah.
And so we need to capture us in action because we'll never be able to recapture that afterwards. And yeah, our product has to stand the test of time, and you have to go in there and be like, yeah, it's still there. But those videos allow us to tell the story of construction. Yeah,
and it's exactly what I was talking about when I have this feeling and I think, all these new people that are just showing up to the Idea Foundry now or being introduced to it now, I want them to know what it was like, and that's obviously the way to do it is, hey, you can watch these videos to tell the story of how it went from nearly abandoned building or land grant. There was nothing there, right?
Yeah, it was an empty building filled with, they had a bunch of junk and a boat and the tap room was an office space with a bunch of just really crappy like 70s finishes.
Yeah.
It was something else.
Yeah. And now it's awesome. It's a very cool neighbor to have to the Idea Foundry.
Absolutely.
Literally next door. There was something in there. I feel like the doing the videos, and I like that you said you're inspired by it, by other people doing that. I mean, that's like what I get from social media. So when someone does something great like that, I just think, man, we should record more stuff. I even think that about the Idea Foundry. We do a great job with all these photos and stuff, but it's like, oh, you have no idea how many projects. Matt Hatcher is one of those where he's building something cool every single day. Now the project they're doing, I'm sure you're aware of it, but most people, if you walk by in the workshop, kind of over by the front area, he's building a new front desk. And it's got some of the original wood that was up here on the second floor as the front face. And then he made concrete. I say he did, but he had people help him, obviously. Yeah. And I'm sure he'd be the first to point that out. But he's down there working on it right now. And the tabletops are beautiful. It's got these big concrete accents. It's a masterpiece. And I was like, are you taking photos? He's like, yeah, I'm taking photos. But it's like, there's so much going on around here that it's too much to even keep track of. Right. So yeah, it's the kind of stuff you want to document it now while you have the chance. It's like when their kids grow up, I wish we took more photos. Or if you go on a major diet, you're like, I should have taken before photos. It's like, take the photos now, do the video stuff now. Yeah. Because you're going to use it.
Right. And there's that fine line if you want to get into, living your life, right? You got to be in the present moment and, put your camera phone down when you're at an event, but still, try to capture some memories and try to tell the story or remember the story. I mean, especially from a business perspective. I mean, that's where business is at. You got to be out there. You got to be telling your story. And it's not about selling. It's about telling the story. It's about saying, here's what we do and we love what we do.
I'm glad you brought that up. My dad owns a furniture store and I've always worked there, like high school, college and stuff like that. And I've always thought, man, I couldn't be a salesperson. Kind of like what you were saying earlier. You were a salesperson. And it wasn't really for you. And I've always thought that too. Like I could do any job in here, but salesperson. I just can't see myself selling things to people. He always says, don't think of it as selling. Think of it as helping them. You know all there is to know about this product or this, whatever it is, furniture in his case. And someone comes in and they're overwhelmed. They have all this stuff. They don't know what to do. And you are just helping them find the right thing. Right. When you think about it that way, that works for the best people. That's how they do it. So you don't feel, what would you even call it? Disingenuous. You don't feel like you're trying to trick someone and used car salesman kind of thing. Right. Right. And I think that about, just being a small business owner is like that too, where there's guys I'm sure you've met around there and everyone knows them where they're salesmen-y. And then I think it's more important, like you're talking about, to tell the story. When I think that people don't realize this, when you see these, and I see this too, I think these things that work really well on Facebook are when you see these little Facebook videos or like Kickstarter. Kickstarter always has a video, tells the story of why they're the ones making this product or business or whatever it is. And that's what really gets people to notice it. Like, there are a million products out there. And if you really look at it, a lot of these products, especially even on Kickstarter, some of them aren't new or they're not entirely new, but the thing that gets people hooked in is the story.
Absolutely.
I think that 100% about what you're doing. I think that about if you are a person that works in the Idea Foundry, I think just working at the Idea Foundry is a cool story. Look at the school environment. Just the fact that you should just play up those kind of things. Look at this cool place where we work, just do videos, photos, whatever it is. But when it comes to getting your story out there, make sure that you tell that kind of story, because it may seem old to you, or like, oh, well, we do this all the time, so we know it. Right. But not everybody out there knows that how you got started or whatever, the Compton construction story. And I didn't know. I thought you had been around longer. So it's interesting for me to hear that's how you just started. It's
cool.
Cool.
And I, the Idea Foundry's gone through a brand refresh over the transformation of the second floor. And I really love where the logo's at. And I love the old logos, the light bulb, because it's had the CIF in it. And I remember the original logo was very intricate.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. And I remember there was like a metal sculpture. I think Allie Mead and some other folks worked on it.
I don't remember exactly who did it, because I thought it was Alex.
Okay.
But you might be right. But I know she made it into a real object a couple of times.
Okay.
Allie did.
And my original company's name when I first started, when I left my old company, was CR Services.
Yeah.
And it had a logo I had made, and it had a business guy with an orange tie and like an expanding ray coming off of him. And it was orange and black. CR standing for Compton Roush. And Roush was a mentor of mine that actually kind of changed my life in my early 20s. And we had worked together since then, off and on random construction related things. And so I had started the company to do maintenance stuff with him. And then I went back to work, so kind of sat around. So when I left, I was like, oh, I have this LLC.
Sure.
I have a website. It wasn't ready, but it was about 2 months into it that I was just like, this name's stupid. And I had a vendor call me, and they're like, CRS Services 614, because my LLC had 614 in the LLC. And I had to explain for the 20th time that week what it was. And I'll never forget sitting in a car about to go into the print shop to pick up some drawings. And I looked to my left, and I saw this big Turner Construction banner waving in the wind. And I was like, CR Services. And I'm like, that's just dumb.
Yeah.
And I remember calling my dad up, and I said, Harold, do you want to retire where you started? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I want to bring Grandpa's company name back and call it Compton Construction. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. So we went and talked to Grandpa, and Grandpa was like, I don't care. This is whatever.
Yeah.
And, we went through the rebranding process and built a website and got to tell our story in a different way. And I'm so glad that we did that in the moment, because CR Services does not ring the same well as Compton Construction.
Oh, no. And, well, you have the double-edged sword of, I always think that when you own the company, especially if it's small, there's an interesting thing where people make an assumption right away about how big your company is. So that's funny.
Yeah.
But if you have the same last name as the company, it's like, well, you either are the owner, or your dad's the owner, or your brother, you're clearly big time in the company. So you can't hide behind that and say, oh, I'll have to go ask my boss or whatever. If you have to, if you have to negotiate something or whatever, they know you're the guy.
Right.
But yeah, it's obviously, I think because you do such a good job of getting the brand out there, that I feel like associating with your name makes perfect sense, because they know you, now they know the brand. How big of a company was it when your grandpa owned it?
When he had the original Compton Construction, I think in his heyday he had like 4 crews of like 5 or 6. They were true carpenters. So they did wood framing, and it started with renovating houses and then building houses. And then as they got more sophisticated and larger, they became subcontracting, a subcontracting company to do like hotels, motels, and travel the tri-state area, like doing framing. And that was really where my dad got a taste of commercial, where he was a carpenter out on a job site on a big project. And actually got into a fight with a guy that ended up hiring him like 3 years later. Yeah. And the guy was like, you're the only one that's ever yelled at me. I'm going to hire you.
I like that. That's nice. Like he was sick of yes men kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
That's funny. That's cool. Yeah, I think it's perfect now. Like in hindsight, when you look back and you say, well, the name was sitting right there. It was your grandpa's company. Why not resurrect it? And then now it makes perfect sense. It's like, well, yeah, obviously. Right. And the CR Services, you're beating up the name a little bit, but yeah, it sounds fake. It sounds generic. It sounds like you don't want people to know what you do.
Right.
Like maybe at your thought at the time, I'll just guess, but your thought process at the time was, well, services, we won't restrict ourselves to any one thing. We offer services. And you were saying you were doing, it was like building maintenance stuff and property management kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, that was the main plan with it. At the time when I started it, it was also about helping my friend who had had water damage in his condo, and I was helping renovate it for him to really keep him. He didn't have insurance, so he had this water damage, destroyed his place, and he didn't have any insurance, so he didn't have enough money to fix it, and he had nowhere to live. And so that was really the catalytic moment that I was like, wait, I can do something on my own. And but no, I mean, there was not a lot of force. It was kind of more of an umbrella name where I was like, well, I can also do this, I can do that. And I didn't know what I was good at the time, 2010, 2011. And I was doing too much. So I kind of wanted a name that allowed me to do too much.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that's a lesson to learn, is that I always think this when it comes to like marketing or even like branding, or what you should do if you're thinking about starting a company or something like that, is that you really do want to focus in the beginning.
Right.
In the beginning, you want it to be real obvious. It's almost the other way around, that you want your customers to look at your company and think, oh, that is or isn't for me. They're already self-selecting. And then if they come to you, they've already sought you out in a way. And then eventually you can sort of expand your repertoire or your menu of what you actually wind up doing. But in the beginning, even though there's that tendency to do that, and it definitely, there are definitely people who have been successful doing that, where we'll do anything. What's the project? Sure, we'll learn how to do that. We'll figure out how to do it, whatever. But I think in the beginning, it actually, it sort of like looking back, it makes a lot more sense to focus first, and then if you have the resources, you can do other things.
So to touch on that, but take a step back first, you had said that I didn't feel like I was a salesperson, and I'll clarify that. Yeah, I am good at sales, and sales isn't a bad thing. In essence, it's knowing when to sell and what you're selling, and it's all about telling your story. I didn't feel authentic at the other company, and it was about a culture thing. It was about what the brand of that company represented, and at the time, and how the owner was, pursuing work. And I was supposed to pursue work alongside, but I was going after breweries and tech companies, and I didn't feel authentic on who I was inside of that company. So I wanted to be authentic and create a company around that culture. So sales is selecting the types of clients you want. So if you want people that want to buy from someone that's manipulating them, you're going to get people that are probably going to try to manipulate you.
Sure.
So if you try to find people that you're just honest and like, hey, we're not the right fit, then you're going to find people that want to work with you, because they trust that when you say, hey, I want to work with you, they want to work with you as well.
Yeah. And you're not just doing it because they're paying you.
Right.
You're doing it because it also makes sense.
There's got to be a passion behind it. I actually just had a lunch meeting with a couple of my employees, and we talked exactly about that. Like, one of my younger guys, I was saying, when you're out there in the field and you're running the job site, you literally have to feel like you're the business owner or you're the tenant, and you're sitting in that conference room a year from now, and you're looking at, where the outlets are and where the door is and the lights are, and you're like, is this where it needs to be? You can go through the design of any project, and there's always going to be a change once you build it, because we're not working with, small business owners don't do this every day. So when they see something on the paper, they go, yeah, that's where I want it. Until that wall's up and that outlet's there, and you're like, why am I putting the TV in the corner again? When I'm facing everyone else the other direction. And so those little details have to be, reconsidered out there in the field, and we're all busy. And so, guys working out in the field, they look at the drawings and say outlet goes there, they put the outlet there. But you have to have that moment where you're like thinking about the tenant or the client, the small business owner, and being in their shoes and owning what they do. And I think, I hope that, our spaces are delivered that way as best as possible. There's always going to be a mistake made. I mean, it's very complicated.
Oh, sure.
But just showing that you care, I think, is at the end of the day is important.
Yeah. I'm glad you clarified that about being a salesperson, because I find that's so hard. Like you said, it's like being a salesperson where someone just says, here's our product, sell it, and you like maybe don't really care that much about it, that is exactly what I can't do.
Right.
But if when it comes to things I actually care about, oh yeah, like if I'm passionate about something or whatever, it doesn't even seem like sales or whatever. I'm just telling you all about something I like. And if you're into it, you're into it. And if you're not, I'll tell you, hey, this isn't for you or whatever, but I'm into it. So I get it. I'm glad you clarified that because I think that's important.
And then there's that next level that I think many Idea Foundry members that are starting their own business or have their own business need to understand. And that's value your time and value your services. So it's one thing to be able to, feel authentic and be like, okay, they want to buy my coffee table or my light fixture, or whatever product whatever widget you make. But it's another thing to say, my product is worth this.
Yeah.
And like sometimes if it's the first time you've made it, you can say, okay, I'll charge less because I'm learning. And you don't always have to tell them that, you can just give them a price, and if they agree to it, that's great. But then at some point you just have to say, this is what it's worth, because people don't know what it's worth. And if you don't believe it's worth whatever it is, then people are going to knock it down.
Yeah. This is a big discussion, but yeah, I totally agree that, especially if you're talking about a product, I always think about, you've got what it actually costs to make. And I'm talking about if you ship it, packaging and all that stuff, the complete cost that it costs to make. And if you plan on selling it wholesale to someone, then you've got your price and they're going to want 50% off of that. Most likely. There are different businesses, different industries, and they have sort of different standards, but let's just say 50%. So you have to sort of build that in. I have a product and it sounds crazy to say if you've never really done the math, but I sell it for 4 times that. And then because that's the only way I'm going to be able to sell it for half that wholesale. And so that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize is when they first start out, they think, well, I have this thing and cost me $20 to make, so I can sell it for $30 and I'll make $10 off each one. I'm fine with that. But you haven't thought long enough ahead, or you haven't considered packaging, or you haven't considered who knows what other costs there could be down the road. And so I think that I've seen a lot of businesses where they get themselves stuck. Now my product costs this much. I can't change it later. It's harder to change it later.
Right.
And they get stuck with that. And I think you're totally correct. A lot of people say that about freelance. I used to do websites for a long time and stuff. And it's like, you should be more aggressive about where you think your time is worth, because almost the other way around. It's much harder to suddenly increase over time when it's like, okay, well, this is what I do believe it's worth. And then you'll eventually find the right people who value it as well.
I worked with a young lady who just started She started copywriting for her own. She'd freelance copywriter. And one of the tricks that I had for her was I said, you need to find a client. Like you're going off on your own, go find a client. So we did a little brainstorm of all the people she had engaged with over the last year on some level, whether it was free stuff or community based. And we wrote a whole list. I think there was 15 people. And then I said, which one do you think would buy your services first? And she listed 3 of them. And I said, well, go to those people first. And she went to the first person she went to, she said, I want to do this for you. I want to do your social media and do that. And they agreed to some terms. And I think it was like $25 an hour or something like that, with some traded services, the hair salon. And after she got the client, she came back and I said, okay, now your next client, charge more.
Yeah.
And she did that. And I said, charge more until someone says no. And then you know your rate.
It's true.
And she got all the way up to like $60 an hour before someone said no to her.
Yeah.
And it was, and at the end of and I remember she called me up. She's like, I don't know what to do. She had never had that rejection. And she wanted the work. And I said, well, negotiate.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't think that client ended up going through, but they became very difficult to work with, even on the proposal side.
Sure.
And I said, this is exactly why you do this, because the people that want to work with you are going to work with you. And the people that don't want to work with you shouldn't work with you. And so if you give them the reason not to work with you, then that's the reason you don't have to deal with the drama. Because sometimes the hardest clients are not the ones that you want to work with anyway.
Sure. Yeah, we used to, I love that you said that, because that's such an interesting thing if someone's starting out. I'm assuming there are people who are at the Idea Foundry that are most people I assume are some version of entrepreneur here. So I think that's valuable. I don't know if I mentioned this. I'm sure I've said it before, but I have a degree in business from Ohio State in entrepreneurship. So this is the kind of stuff that I could talk all day about this. I love this stuff. So what Levi and I used to do with Refab was, and I promise, because you just said we worked together, we did not do this to you. We were the other way around. But what we used to do was, if you'd worked with someone, because every job's different. Mm-hmm. It's very rare that someone would say, "Hey, you made that thing for us, make another one." That usually didn't happen. So what we would do is if you did a job for someone the first time, this is tough though. This is sort of a lesson learned. You did a job for someone and you gave them a pretty good price. "Hey, I want to work with you. It's a cool project, whatever, I'll do it." And then they come back and they want this crazy price like they did, or they were tough to work with, or they were like super demanding despite the fact that you gave them a crazy deal.
Right.
We would give them a kind of a go away quote, like, "Here's what I think it is, times 2. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you wind up doing it anyway. Sometimes they say yes. And so it's like, well, I'm so glad I asked that. I said that because, I would do it for twice the amount. So,
because that's what it's worth. Yeah. Because it's harder to work with you
it's
than
a pain,
we do have a learning story when we were doing the furniture. If you remember, you sent your final invoice in and taxes were on it.
Yeah.
And I remember going, whoa. And because this has happened to me with my subcontractors, with my clients, if I have a $500,000 project and I tell them that's what it is, and at the end I say, plus 7.5%, that's a lot of money.
Sure.
And so I have to say it includes taxes, what my number is. And I have a lot of vendors that do that. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't that I didn't want to pay the taxes. It was that disclose all the fees in advance.
Sure.
So if it's $1,000 product and then the last second you throw in, shipping and handling and all these other things, and you didn't exclude that specifically in your proposal. I'm not saying everyone has to do it this way. I'm just saying in my experience and what I do, I buy a lot of services as a contractor. Those things need to be disclosed in the terms and conditions.
Yeah, I think that is something. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm not glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought it up as a teaching moment, right? Because I think that, or a learning moment, because I think that a lot of people, who are doing something like this, they might not know that. And I feel like, different industries are different. Service is different. Who knows? But it's something that you might as well, doing it again. I would absolutely say that ahead of time. Right. Taxes are part of this or whatever it is. So yeah, totally. I feel like that was something. I'm glad we're still friends after that.
Well, and so as call it a learning experience, and exactly what you just said, I'm glad we're still friends. I would say presume positive intent with anything in business.
Sure.
Don't assume someone's doing a negative thing to you. If it comes off that way, maybe it's on accident. Maybe they don't understand, and maybe they don't even realize it's happening. Mm-hmm. And so, I've seen people get really upset about pricing and stuff like that before. And if you can just say, "Hey, I disagree with you, and here's why," and then it's just a back and forth, and that I want to work with people that have the same kind of character and ethics that I want to have. Mm-hmm. And so if you're authentic to that, then you're going to find people that are willing to say, "Hey, yeah, I messed up," or "You messed up, and I said this and you agreed to it. Here's the email," and you can just move forward. Sure. And I think that just focusing on moving forward rather than, ending things over $500 or $200 is big. And that is really just something that you have to have experience to go through that and say, "Hey, this sucked. I don't want this to happen again. My proposals are going to say this thing now." Yeah.
That is one of my least favorite things about business a lot of times, is that when you first start, you think, "I'll have this guy work for me just like on a as needed project basis. I'll pay you whatever it is, $200 under the table." Mm-hmm. And then you can't do that because you'll have to do it for tax reasons.
Right.
And so should or would they. And so then you have to get 1099, W-9, something like that. Then you learn that kind of stuff. Then you learn that, hey, if I have this guy here, he'd go get another job, or he could suddenly quit on me. So then you have to have things like contracts, or the same thing as if you do a job for a client. Okay, well, what happens if we don't do it? Or what happens if it doesn't come in on time? Or what happens if suddenly stuff costs a ton more and I just can't afford to do the job or something. So you have to have a contract. It's like, in theory, I wish we didn't have to do all that stuff, but like every time, every policy that I have, I'm sure you're the same way. It's like, well, it's because we tried to do it that way one time, and this guy, took advantage of it or whatever it was.
Right.
So that's learning stuff too that I think people should can benefit from our experience. You want to talk about Killer Queen? We got 5 more minutes. So Killer Queen, we mentioned it last time, and Zach Bacon actually mentioned it too, that a lot of people around here may think that you are a professional Killer Queen player, and that would be true if it was possible.
How do you define professional?
To make money doing it. I guess I know you did a tournament and you won something, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have won money, so I would argue that I'm professional.
Yeah, technically you are a professional. Yeah. That's not your only gig, but you are a professional.
Yeah, there's a big delta. There's a big negative compared to the awards, the winnings that I have. Mm-hmm. I think I've won $30. Yeah, $2.15. You won $75 for the team. You split it up 5 ways, so you get $15. I took in second place in 2 tournaments, so that's why I have $30.
The craziest thing, that's why I have $30 in my total winnings. So let me define what it is. It's a 5-on-5 arcade machine. It looks like a simple old school game, but it's actually all modern computers and stuff running the whole thing. But they have one over at Arcade Super Awesome above Yellow Brick.
Yes.
And that's the only one in Columbus?
Correct.
That's the only one in the state?
Yes.
And, what else is the other thing? Oh, so the craziest thing to me about it is that's how rare it is. Like, people are driving from Cincinnati to play this.
Right.
Because there just isn't one anywhere near them. But what I find, the obvious thing that's so interesting about it is the fact that there's no other 5-on-5 game.
No, there isn't. No.
Like, you play an arcade game, what, like Simpsons, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? They had like 4 people.
Yeah, and I guess to clarify, yes, there are other 5-on-5 games. There are no other, standalone, non-internet based 5-on-5, like in a space you have to be around 9 other people to play the game. There's no other game like that.
Yeah. And obviously it becomes a big social thing because of that. Right. The other day I went the last 2 Wednesdays, so I went this past Wednesday, and it was like the perfect amount of people. There were probably 15 to 20 people come and go. And it's perfect because a couple games, you play like best of 3 or whatever, you play 3 games, and then people rotate in, people have the chance to go to the bathroom, whatever, it's a bar, you go get another drink, and it's just a perfect social thing. You have a chance to talk, you have this focus of what you're doing.
Right.
You get to yell your silly little things that you're yelling at
and
people.
You're really good at it already. I mean, two weeks into it, and you come in and you scream things that you heard on the internet.
Oh, good at yelling things. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I thought you said good at the game. I was that's
good at yelling things.
Not correct. Yeah, I'm picking up on the lingo pretty quick.
Yes.
And I find it so funny because when you first tried to explain this to me, you were being 100% serious. But you were like, okay, well, what you need to do is get the berries in the hole and then pay attention because they might be getting the snail. And I was like, the snail? Are you messing with me? Like,
right.
You could be making all of this up and I would have no idea. But it is that complicated and simple at the same time. But there's all this crazy lingo and jargon and silly things to yell. And the other day I noticed that, there's like these little strategy things that I was just, I heard them, but I'm like, barely to the point of understanding what they are, but I know enough about where it's a joke.
Barely.
Oh, nice. And so I'll yell the things about berries, and Levi likes saying I'm running like Barry Sanders and stuff like that. So that's fun. Yeah. Well, anyway, people should go check that out, and I think it's a very cool. It's a cool game.
It's successful in Columbus right now, and I love hearing what you're saying because when I first started playing, I showed up just like you did. Someone explained the game to me. I was like, this is fun. Mm-hmm. I want to do this. I came to the first league night, and at the time there were like 8 teams. So there were a lot more people.
Really?
And but the skill level was so much lower. And we just kept getting beat. And I kept saying, I want to get better. And I would show up on the weekends, and I started teaching people how to play the game because you need 10 people to have a fun time. And so I started teaching people, and the next thing you know, I'm in love with the game, and I'm one of the better teams in the league. But what happened is we started traveling, and the small group of us that traveled got really a lot better than everyone else. And we didn't realize it, but we were making it not fun for anyone.
Yeah.
All of last summer going into the fall, we were averaging maybe 6 people on a Wednesday, and it's free play. It's free on Wednesdays. And so that, we had to reevaluate like what the culture we were trying to build, and we've tried to create an inviting place where new people can come in and not feel completely intimidated. There's a level of like over your head, what's going on feeling, but we try to make it inviting and engage people and make sure that they're not sitting there for an hour and not playing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's very, the funny thing is the mechanics of it are simple. I don't want to say the game's simple because it's a crazy amount of complex, especially just looking at it the first time. Plus there's 10 people in the game. They're just all over the place. It's hard to pay attention to all the things that are happening. Which is why it's fun that there's things like the snail where suddenly you don't realize, but they got the snail in and I wasn't even paying attention to the snail the whole game. So, and the games last like a couple minutes, basically 1 to 3 minutes, really not that long, depending on who wins. But yeah, when I was, the mechanics of the game are simple. So when I first showed up, I just wanted people to say, berries is obviously like sort of the beginner's thing. There's like easy goal, get the berry, take it here every time. Yeah. Just keep going as long as you can, as fast as you can. And you keep dying and you keep restarting and doing it over again. So it's an easy, simple task.
Right.
And that's all I wanted in the beginning was like, just give me a task. Even if it's something more complicated, like try to guard this guy or try to go head to head with someone or whatever, like, I'll try, but like, I don't even know enough to know what to do.
Right.
So, but if you can play Mario, it's jump and move to the left and right. There's nothing else
no other
other than
inputs.
flying. You can hit the thing, jump a bunch when you get wings. And you can fly around, but they are, it's basically pretty simple to pick up. So I found that for the most part, people were pretty inviting and telling me what to do. And I'm always asking, hey, tell me what to do. I don't even know the plan.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough to watch a game for the first 10 seconds and know what I should be doing.
So there's always this reset, and we can probably end it over after this conversation, but there's always this reset for us where a week up to a tournament. So we have a tournament on Saturday in Chicago. Mm-hmm. The level of competition goes up a little bit.
You mean tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
So everyone cares a little bit more the week before, and they're like, let's say, and I think you stayed around till the very end, and we were like, hey, tournament series.
Yeah.
And I saw you watching over. I don't know if you watched the whole series, but I take it seriously in the sense that I enjoy playing, but I also look across and see who I'm playing, and I go, okay, like, how hard do I have to play? Mm-hmm. And I'm impressed that now every week we have a higher level of skill than we've ever had. But then when we split into that team that's going to Chicago, tomorrow, we take it real seriously, and there's a role for all of us, and we follow that role, and we work together as a team and communicate. And so there's that little bit more caring the week before the tournament. And then if there's no tournaments around, I think we're a lot more inviting overall as a group. And I think that's something you just have to monitor. It goes back to culture and building something that's inviting and people want to be a part of.
But I think that's an important lesson, especially, it sounds like you learned this lesson, but it sounds like this game is so unique that there's only one in Ohio. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that would love to have this thing in their town or near them or whatever. And so you have to, because it's so rare, Mario, Pac-Man, pinball in general, there's always people everywhere who know how to play that, and your town probably has 3 or 4 different places where you can go and play that at any point in time. But Killer Queen is so unique that you need to like build the following, the community. So
they have to train. They have to train people.
Yeah.
You can't just get on that game like a group of. You can get on, press the button, and start, but it's a lot easier and a lot less intimidating if someone just says, here's what you need to do. Yeah. Go get the berries. You do this role. You do that role. Here's how the game works. And have someone that's like encouraging and kind of coaching you through what the heck is going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the game makes you do that because it's 10 people playing.
Right.
It's like you said, if you alienated everyone in Columbus, you'd be sitting there playing by yourself against the computer.
Right.
So it would not be fun. So you need a culture of it, and you need a community of people that want to go and feel like they are. All right, that's the only reason I brought that up is because I just wanted to end it on
there will be 2 cabinets.
Killer Queen. Yeah, you're trying to get another one. Or
they
you have
are coming early June, actually. So to be determined on the location, but it's part of why I wanted to buy is exactly back to the beginning of the story on the hooligans. I couldn't just be a soccer fan. I can't just be a Killer Queen fan. And I felt like in order to grow Columbus and make us more successful in tournaments across the country, that Levi button mashing for the win.
Killer Queen was our most popular subject. Yeah, no, I agree. I hope that home is the Idea Foundry. Obviously, there's a lot going on. The funny thing is, some of it's your fault making the Idea Foundry so nice. It's like all of a sudden now every square foot of the Idea Foundry becomes so valuable that it's like, oh, can we put this silly B game in the corner? Well, I don't know. Now it has to be something that we actually think about that decision. So I hope it is here.
Yeah.
Or whatever. It will be somewhere. And it sounds like a great thing that people should check out.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Good.
I like playing it.
You gonna keep playing?
Yeah. I definitely like playing it. I don't know about every week, and I don't know about traveling for tournaments.
Fine. We don't force people to do anything.
Yeah.
We just like to see them. Great.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Blake, for being my guest today.
Yeah.
And filling in for Alex. I think some of the stuff we talked about was great about entrepreneurship, and that's the thing. I think you said you've been doing it for 5 years or whatever. It sounds like 5 years.
Yeah.
And these are the lessons that I think people starting out really, really find valuable. At least I do.
I think that if there's anything going forward, obviously I'd love to be a guest again when the time comes. But it'd be awesome to hear more origin stories. I think. Yeah. I don't even know if we actually got into your origin story a little bit.
Yeah, we did.
But telling the story of the people that have been around here, even like Matt Hatcher,
for sure,
and guys and ladies that have been around for years and came from Corrugated Way, and like how they got to where they got, helps the general membership understand, how much everyone from top and to bottom cares about the success of this space.
Yep, I agree. All right, thanks a lot, Blake.
Thank you.